Ever tried to get like a computer to just do what you want it to do just by like explaining it to it?
Hmm.
It's becoming a little less like science fiction all the time, thanks to AI and this thing that researchers are calling prompt programming, which is what we are diving into today. We'll be unpacking insights from a new research paper called Prompts Are Programs Too, understanding how developers build software containing prompts to understand this whole new way of thinking about AI.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating new frontier to be exploring right now. What I think is so striking is that prompt programming is kind of taking us beyond just the simple chatbot interactions. And it really has implications for tons of software applications that we use every single day.
So does this mean like no more need to write complex code?
Well, not quite. You see, the research paper defines prompt programming as this art of crafting natural language queries, so those prompts to act as instructions for AI models. And these models are really the powerhouse behind things you probably use all the time. Think like ChatGPT or even Google Search.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this is a pretty big deal. I mean, these AI models are everywhere these days.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so relevant for everyone listening right now. The paper even highlights how prompt programming is popping up in some unexpected places, like even Google Search and Microsoft Office.
Wow. So are we talking about developers huddled over their keyboards trying to have like full-on conversations with their computers?
In a way, yes. Essentially, they are learning to communicate with a system that operates in ways we don't fully grasp. And, one of the study's most surprising findings is that even developers with tons of experience, they still find it tough to predict how an AI will react to their prompts.
Kind of sounds like those developers are trying to teach their pet like a new trick.
Yeah.
Like you think you've got the communication down, but then they just stare at you blankly.
That's actually a great analogy. We're still dealing with this black box element of AI. So while we feed these systems mountains of data and they learn to recognize patterns, the exact decision-making process is still kind of a mystery.
Yeah, that definitely explains some of the bizarre and oftentimes hilarious AI fails we've all seen online. And speaking of those fails, this research paper goes into some of the unusual tactics developers are using in prompt programming. Things like strategic bolding, using emojis, and even what they're calling prompt bullying.
Yeah, those tactics might seem odd at first glance, but they really highlight a key aspect of this new type of programming. Developers are adapting to how nuanced AI is, learning its quirks, and even using them to their advantage. Like take prompt bullying, for example. That's actually a way to prevent the AI from revealing the prompt itself, which could be a security concern.
Interesting. So instead of like writing line-by-line instructions like in traditional coding, it's more about understanding the AI's boundaries and guiding it with the right prompts.
Precisely. And this is what makes prompt programming a much more iterative and creative process. It's less about giving rigid commands and more about setting the stage for the AI to deliver the desired outcome.
Okay, that actually makes those unexpected AI responses make a lot more sense. So it's not always a malfunction. It's potentially the AI interpreting something too literally or getting tangled in its vast knowledge base.
You've hit on a crucial point, and this is where the comparison between traditional software development and this new approach of prompt programming becomes really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are some of the key differences developers are facing?
Well, I think there are three major differences that really stand out. How requirements are handled, what debugging actually means in this context, and the crucial importance of having the right data. So yeah, let's start with those requirements. In traditional software development, you'd have a separate document outlining everything the software needs to do.
Right.
But with prompt programming, those lines get a little bit blurry.
Okay, how so?
Well, the prompt itself kind of becomes part of the requirements document because the way you phrase your prompt directly influences how the AI is going to interpret it and what it produces.
So it's like the prompt is kind of both the question and the blueprint for the answer.
Exactly. This means prompt programming requires a different mindset, one where you're thinking about both what you want the AI to do and how you're communicating that goal through your prompts.
And what about debugging? I bet that's a whole other thing in this world of prompt programming.
You're right, it's like a totally different ballgame. In traditional coding, if something breaks, you find the problem in the code and fix it. With AI and prompt programming, it's less about fixing a specific line and more about guiding the AI toward a better response.
So instead of hunting down a bug in the code, you're refining your communication with the AI.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's definitely more nuanced. Developers are even using a technique called shotgun debugging, where they'll make a bunch of small changes to the prompt and just kind of see what yields the best results. It's about experimentation and observation.
It sounds like you need a ton of patience to be a prompt programmer.
Patience and the right data. That's our third key difference. So while data is always important in software development, it's absolutely crucial in prompt programming. The quality, the type, even the sheer volume of data you use to train these AI models directly impacts how well they'll understand your prompts and generate the output you're looking for.
Yeah, it's like trying to teach someone a new language. If you only give them a few words, they're not going to be very fluent, right? But if you immerse them in the language, they'll start to pick it up much faster.
That's a perfect analogy. And actually, the research paper we're looking at today highlights how much time and effort developers are pouring into crafting the ideal data sets for training these AIs. It's a huge undertaking.
It sounds like with prompt programming, we're about to enter this whole new era in software development, one where understanding the AI is just as important as writing the code itself.
Absolutely. And speaking of understanding AI, there's a resource I wanted to mention that could be incredibly helpful for anyone listening who wants to really master this new way of programming. The Generative AI Professional Prompt Engineering Guide by George Tome.
Yeah, that book has been making waves in the AI community. I've heard great things about it.
It's seriously a game changer for anyone who's serious about harnessing the power of AI. The book goes deep on expert tips, techniques, and practical strategies to craft super effective AI prompts.
So if you want to level up your AI game and stay ahead of the curve, the Generative AI Professional Prompt Engineering Guide by George Tome is definitely something to check out. But getting back to our deep dive, it's clear that this prompt programming thing isn't just some fad. It really feels like we're witnessing the birth of a new kind of software development, one that's blurring the lines between code and data.
It's an exciting time to be doing this work. And with this shift, we're seeing new challenges emerge. For instance, how do we even begin to measure the success of an application built with prompt programming? It's not as clear-cut as traditional metrics.
That's a great point. How do you even quantify if an AI-generated poem is good or if a chatbot is truly conversational? I mean, those are very subjective judgments.
Exactly. And it's so fascinating to see how developers are tackling this. They're having to develop entirely new methods for evaluating these AI-driven applications, often combining that quantitative data with some qualitative assessments.
So it's like a blend of art and science.
Precisely. And this is where it gets really meta. The research paper mentions developers using AI to evaluate other AI. Like they might, for example, have one AI write something and then another AI would evaluate it for things like how fluent it sounds and how original it is.
So it's like AI grading its own homework. That's wild.
It really speaks to the evolving role of AI in this new era of software development. We're going beyond just giving commands. We're now teaching AI how to evaluate its own performance. And that, in turn, helps us create even more sophisticated systems.
It's like a feedback loop of learning and improvement, which is both exciting and a little daunting at the same time.
Absolutely. But even with the challenges, there's a ton of optimism within the developer community. The research paper really highlights this belief that prompt programming has the potential to be truly transformative.
Yeah, it does feel like we're in uncharted territory here, like the Wild West of software development, New tools, new techniques, and a whole lot of unknowns.
That's a great way to put it. And with this sense of exploration comes a huge sense of responsibility. We're talking about powerful technology, and it's crucial that we develop it thoughtfully.
It's a good point that as exciting as all of this is with this new frontier of prompt programming, we've got to be careful and really think about what we're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. The impact of this technology really depends on the choices we're making right now.
And when we're talking about impact, I think it's important to remember that the research paper mentioned that even with all these crazy advancements, prompt programming is still so new, like we're just getting started. So if even experienced developers are still kind of feeling their way through it, what tools do we need to build to make prompt programming more accessible and more robust in the future?
That's the million-dollar question, right? We can't expect everyone to just figure it out as they go,
Yeah.
We need better tools and frameworks to make this whole new wave of AI development easier.
But what kind of tools specifically are we talking about here?
Well, imagine like more intuitive debugging tools, right? Or ways to better visualize and manage these massive data sets. We could even have things like ethical frameworks built right into the development process from the very beginning.
So it's really a call to action for, everyone in tech, right?
Absolutely. We have to work together, think outside the box, and always be considering the long-term impact of the AI that we build.
This has been quite a journey, learning about prompt programming with you, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're just starting to figure this all out. The most exciting discoveries are definitely still ahead of us.
Well, listeners, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on AI and prompt programming. Have you had any of those like head-scratching moments where AI did something completely unexpected? Let us know. Share your experiences, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, this has been your deep dive into the world of AI and prompt programming.